Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. We've made it to about halfway through the winter 2024 season, and we have purged our anime lists, our watch lists. We've cut everything down, cut the fat down to the leanest of anime cuts here. And I think we're down to about 6 shows now, which is
It's not too bad.
Not the leanest. Well, I mean, as far as like for all the shows the combined we're watching, that's pretty low, but certainly not the lowest. I mean, we've had somewhere we've only had like 3 or something, and then we had to hit the backlog.
We haven't had to add the Tomino Power Hour to this week's show notes, so
Yeah, it has been a long time since we've had to add the Tomino Power Hour, but it's definitely become a leaner season. Although I will say, a lot of these shows I do feel pretty strong about. Like, I feel like they're good.
It's lean and mean. There's good stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'd say that the stuff we've got left is pretty solid.
Perhaps maybe one exception, but we'll get to that. To introduce everybody before we get into the anime talk, I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
Still here with us. We are joined by G.
Only the best remain.
Mm-hmm.
What is that referencing?
The anime, presumably.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was just referring to this season. Yes. That,
okay.
I thought if your show isn't here, then I'm sorry.
I thought that was a reference going over my head. I'm sorry. Okay, no.
I mean,
it's just literally
a reference. I mean, I watched the Tekken 8 story mode, in which all the countries of the world participate in a single elimination bracket tournament, in which each fighter represents their respective region. And when they lose in the bracket, Kazuya Mishima destroys their country.
What, like personally?
Yes. Well, it's Devil Kazuya.
This sounds like some Baki grappler shit.
Yes.
Like turning the King of Iron Fist tournament into like the Gundam battle is a weird tangent to go on, but sure, why not?
Sure.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know. I guess in there he does kind of say something along the lines of "only the strongest remain."
I mean, that sounds like something that would be in the Tekken 8 story mode. So if your country didn't make it into the top 16, it didn't deserve to exist. Yeah.
So
it wasn't trying hard enough.
What you're saying is that in the very best scenario, Tekken 8 involves the destruction of like 90% of the world.
Yeah, that's kind of his deal. Yeah, he's kind of just like saying, only the strongest will remain.
I mean, there was already a world war in the backstory of Tekken in Tekken 6. So
I guess that wasn't good enough for Kazuya. He needed to pare down, like this season of anime. Kazuya Mishima needed to pare the list down even further.
Yes. All right. Well, to finish the introductions, we are joined by Zig.
Yes, in exactly 1 month, I will be in the land of anime, China, and then Japan.
Oh
dear.
I mean, China does dominate the anime game market right now, so maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, the China is very good at taking ideas and then making a lot of copies of them, and they have done that with games, they've done that with anime, they've done that with pretty much anything you would like to name.
I will leave that statement alone, and
Indeed.
We will move on. So, let's catch up on things that we were watching, and before we get into the anime talk, it's been a while since we've had a Toku Time update with Iro and Zig.
Oh, yeah?
And maybe you guys can fill us in on what's going on these days.
Sure. So, sorry about that. We are still on the same 2 shows that we had last time we had Toku Time. So that is Ohsama Sentai King-Ohger and Kamen Rider Gotchard. And they have taken radically different paths to get to this point, I will say. Iro, do you want to say something about King-Ohger?
King-Ohger is sort of just has revealed its hand as a poor Gurren Lagann imitator. right? It's just a
Yeah,
lot of the same plot beats, like adjusted for
Well,
King
Time skip.
Ohger. Hmm?
what does it mean to imitate Gurren Lagann poorly?
They had the first half of the show was about fighting these
evil bug.
evil bug creatures, and then they defeated the evil bug creatures, and the second half of the show has been about the intergalactic conqueror who created the original conflict in the first place and now is here to kill all of them. And the scale has increased, and the King-Ohgers are going into space and trying to create plans to evacuate to another planet and powering up to fight in bigger and bigger and bigger mechs to fight this intergalactic being.
And also, it turns out the big bad actually created our hero in like a weird conspiracy which happened thousands of years ago and all that kind of stuff.
And this is bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say this must be pretty bad because like what you're describing on paper, I'm like, yeah,
Well,
all that stuff worked out pretty well for Gurren Lagann.
I love to row fight the power.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
come on.
Gurren Lagann has strong presentation and writing, and things happen in ways that make sense.
So,
although now I'm trying to imagine this happening on a typical Toku budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's part of I mean, it's worth reiterating that this is the show which is shot entirely against green screen, like Mandalorian style, except again on a tokusatsu budget. So it consistently has the problem of looking ugly and extremely fake, and
not in a fun way.
It's occasionally in a fun way when they do something weird and cool with it, but most of the time it's just like instead of fighting in a real street, we're fighting in a back projected street, and now everything looks kind of muddy. And the problem with the storytelling, at least in my opinion, is that they have a huge number of interesting, cool ideas and absolutely no idea on how to implement them or like realistically build or pay them off. So like they're chucking out cool concepts left, right, and center, and they are either resolved within like 10 minutes or they come out of nowhere and have no lasting impact and then immediately end again. Yeah. I mean, would you say that's a fair critique there, Iro?
Yeah, I'd say probably around once an episode. I'm thinking to myself, this exchange or moment would be not bad. It would be pretty all right if there was any work put into making it fit anything that else that has happened. It's like none of it's earned, right?
Yeah, and part of the problem is that the characters are just not likable. I mean, I think it's difficult to like write decent characters in a Super Sentai show because again, it's a show aimed at 6-year-olds, but there's just the characters don't really display agency. They don't really have personalities beyond their predefined one personality quirk. So one of them is stoic, one of them is vain, one of them is goofy, and they don't really have much of a personality beyond that. I mean, a good example is the Blue Ranger, who they set up as like somebody who built his kingdom up from scratch, and there's one episode where like he has to choose between his best friend and like remaining king of the kingdom, and he chooses his best friend and they destroy the entire kingdom, and that's kind of cool, and it's not mentioned again for like half a dozen episodes, and when it is mentioned again it turns out they've rebuilt it off screen and everything is normal. Like that's the kind of like constant idea anticlimax progression we're getting through here. They just can't stick to a single idea, a single concept, and it feels like a 10-year-old wrote it. The ideas are great, but there's absolutely no ability to build drama or tension or anything really.
It's over ambitious for what it is, right? Like, and maybe I don't know. Maybe that I don't know if it's actually been popular with the kids or what. because maybe a kid watches this and goes, "Wow, so much is going on. This is so cool," right? But we are used to seeing the seams. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not the target audience, but
Yeah, I mean, I think we always have to preface that we are very
Right.
much not the
I mean,
target
you guys can usually differentiate when it's like, oh, well, this is just a kid show being a kid show versus this is just not well written.
Yeah,
and it stands out particularly compared to the current Kamen Rider, I think.
Yes, yeah, let's
Okay.
switch to Gotchard, because Gotchard is way less ambitious. It's following the Kamen Rider, the modern Kamen Rider formula, basically to a T, but it's really successful at executing all the things it's trying to do. And as a result, the show is really genuinely good. You know, they are building up, you know, small plot threads that last a couple of episodes each, but they're satisfying, they pay off, there's some fun stuff, there's some scary stuff, you know, it's a very well put together nuts and bolts show.
Mm-hmm. The writer of Kamen Rider Gotchard is Keiichi Hasegawa, who
Yes.
has worked on many Toku shows and also Rage Bahamut Genesis and Gridman Dynazenon.
Yes. So, and like it's a very illustrative comparison, you know, because again, I don't think Gotchard is being tremendously ambitious. You know, it has all the hallmarks. You know, there's an evil bad guy. He has minions. There's one guy who's turned from the good guys to the bad guys. And, you know, the second rider is a tortured, you know, sort of badass who's by the standards of 10-year-olds, you know. But it's just like the things the characters do make sense. They integrate the like obligatory goofy power-ups really well. The jokes are funny. The actors mostly seem into it, and they actually have motivation, you know. And it makes sense as a very solid, you know, kids afternoon show. And yes, I know it's actually shown in the morning, but you know what I mean. And you know, I think there's been an excellent recent plot arc which focuses on the second rider, whose name I will remind you is Kuragane Spanner, about how you know he was killed, like his parents were killed by the bad guy when he was young, and you know they in one of the funniest
I think it
might be intentional.
I think it's the right way to do camp, sort of, which is it is
plausibly deniable.
Yeah, I think to the writer, they're probably like, this is hilarious, but you can take it at face value as serious.
They have a monster of the week who can bring people back from the dead, and just to be clear, there's no catches to this. This monster of the week can just bring people back from the dead, and their evil plan is they're going to drive this guy into despair and turn him into a more powerful monster of the week. So to that end, they bring his parents back to life and then kill them in front of him again. And they do this 3 times over the course of 2 episodes, and it's super funny. And it is done properly, like super mustache twirling style, and you know, it's so dumb, and yet they play it for like maximum goofy drama. And of course, you know, he loses control and he turns into a sick looking monster, and then he has to fight, like the main rider has to fight him, but no, he powers through his anger and grief and emerges with a new rider form himself. And you know, it's script like 101, but they do it so well, and like the actors are selling it. The script is smart enough to kind of like keep winking at the camera occasionally, and it's just good fun. You know, it's just really good fun. And there's, you know, no, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like, what else could you ask for from a children's television program other than to be good fun, right? For all ages.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, you know, they have got a couple of plot threads that are bubbling away in the background. I don't expect this to turn into a grand conspiracy theory, but they're just good at the little things, at remembering like little character motivations, little plot threads, you know, and they just keep them bubbling with a line here or an aside glance there or a quick camera shot here and there, you know, and just kind of like, you never get the feeling that they have forgotten about something. They're keeping
Right.
stuff in the loop, even if it's just only for a very, very brief time. And, most of the cast seems to understand the material and to be playing to it very well. There's a running joke in Kamen Rider shows that the second rider is mostly there to be tortured and like look pretty
Edgy,
well.
yeah.
Look edgy and pretty while his world is collapsing around him, and it works well here. My only major critique against it is the actress who plays main girl is not good.
Right.
Let's be kind.
She's being given solid material, but she is not particularly good at acting it out.
Yes. And it's less a question of quality of acting. We just need more acting. It's like, it could be more bad acting, but we need more acting from her. Everybody else understands that this is a quantity, not quality job.
Yes.
But yeah, it is just a very well put together adventure story that keeps throwing out cool twists and fun character stuff.
Yeah.
And it's sort of it's a really striking contrast between King-Ohger, which has this huge ambition and is trying to tell this epic tale, and just is building a castle on sand, whereas this is a much more modest affair, at least currently, but executes so well that it is very clearly and obviously a better show.
Yeah.
I should also note that King-Ohger finishes in 2 weeks. So by the next Toku time, there will be a new Super Sentai coming out. We don't know much about it. It's called Boom Boom Ja. It's about cars. Yeah, no, really.
Yeah.
It is about cars, and it will have a theme song by Masaki Endo, and that is basically all we know.
Maybe they're going to recover on that one then.
Another car themed one. So
yeah. They have tires for heads.
I think a cool theme song can only take you so far.
It can only carry you so far. Yeah, maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, it's either cars, dinosaurs, or cops, right? So there's only so many variations you can have.
Yeah, you've pretty much covered all the bases there, honestly.
Ninjas.
Yeah, ninjas.
Oh, true. You can have ninjas.
Yeah. Space.
Yep.
I guess could you divide like Sentai into like 3 general like genuses of like emulating biological creatures, emulating occupations, and then emulating like concepts.
Concept, yeah. Basically.
Didn't Zenkaiger basically do that? Like,
yeah, kind of. You can broadly divide it into, these are the magic ones, these are the science ones, and these are like the
just like Kamen Rider, we're on the triangle of biotech and magic. Yeah.
Basically.
And to be clear, when I say occupations, ninja and cowboys fall under that umbrella.
There was a ninja cowboy at one point.
Excellent.
He transformed using a burger.
When in the previous anniversary series, Zenkaiger, where the Rangers were basically based on just like the broader concepts of the series writ large, the Rangers were dinosaur, animal, magic, and machine. So
sounds about right.
It was a fairly meta show overall.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's kind of a running gag that Super Sentai and Kamen Rider can never be good at the same time.
Yes.
And at the moment, it is very much Kamen Rider that's in the ascendant.
Continues to be true. Yeah.
I was about to bring that up.
Yes. Yep. And there's also on the Toku front, there's a new Garo.
Ah, yes.
Garo's back?
Garo's back because the Patchy Parlors are back.
Okay, I was going to say, I feel like Garo just straight up feels like it stopped existing.
Because the Patchy Parlors were closed.
Yes.
Also, I'm serious.
The past couple of live-action Garos have been sort of weird diversions into... Like, the last one was kind of basically a kung fu battle royale where Garo only showed up at the very end, and it was weird.
Because I was about to say, I don't know, Garo kung fu battle royale sounds pretty cool. And
It was.
Garo doesn't show up.
But it was just dudes fighting, right? Like,
sure.
It was very cool, but it was also like extremely unconnected to the sort of. And to be clear, like Garo has always kind of run multiple continuities, but this new Garo show is a direct sequel to the second Garo show. which was called The One,
Who Shines in the Darkness.
Yeah. So they got back all that cast and everything like that. And, it's cool. Like, it looks great for a Toku show. It's relatively expensive. The last episode was just them fighting a zombie apocalypse, which was pretty fantastic. The ladies are still sultry and mysterious. The dudes are still hot himbos. There's still a lot of sub B movie gore and stuff like that. I
will be a little downer, more of a downer on it, and
Sure.
the writing in that show is nothing. It's an excuse, right? There's absolutely zero.
Yeah, not much has actually
any of
happened
it.
is kind of the problem with that show so far. Like, the cool stuff is cool, but there's been zero actual.
It's been 6 episodes. You know what the plot is? The Garo comes to the new city, and because the dude in charge of that city is an angry teen whose dad disappeared a couple years ago, and he feels like he needs to live up to that, but he's just so angry, and maybe he'll fall into the darkness, or maybe he won't. But in the meantime, where you have to fight monsters, and Garo will have to tell this kid about twice an episode, you need to learn what it is to be a true Makai Knight, etc., etc.
But is this Garo Knight like the width of 3 men?
No.
Does he eat piles of burgers and steaks?
No, I think the funniest part to me is he looks confused at all times.
Yes.
He just has this kind of face.
He has enormous himbo energy.
He looks like he just hit a blunt and is a little bit confused about why he's here.
I mean, Sword also had enormous himbo energy, if you really get down to it.
It's very much in that vein, I mean, Ivo is completely right. There is no plot here. But also, everybody looks like they're in a Visual Kei video, and the horror last time was infected a bunch of telemarketers who then turned into shambling zombies, and yeah, I mean, I think it looks cool, and the fights are awesome, and
every time I see a live action shot of Garo and I see these costumes, I'm like, how did the anime convince them to just let them dress the Garo guys as relatively normal people?
I mean, by setting it 400 years in the past is the answer.
Well, even the modern day one, Sword just wears a tank top and jeans.
I mean, because it's really hard to animate wearing leather everything.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
There is so much leather, leather and fake leather, and fucking it's
sorry, I just looked up Sword and I didn't remember what his real name was, and now I'm losing it.
What's his real name? I don't think I even knew.
Sword?
Wilhelm Ragnvald.
Sure.
No, it's not. It's Sword. Sword is his real name.
Yeah.
It's Sword.
All right. Well,
anyway, if you enjoy shows where everybody looks like they're in a gacked video circa 2003, you should watch Garo.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately gonna cut this off at Garo costume choices and move on. But we'll keep an eye on that for sure.
There's your Toku minute.
And that's been your Toku time update. All right, let's move on to our anime talk and the shows we have remaining on this season.
Yes.
And we can start with Frieren Beyond Journey's End.
Yes. We've
guys,
finished part 1 of the Wizard DMV. We're moving on to part 2 of the Wizard DMV.
The important lesson I learned from this show is that beating up old men is cool.
I was pretty bored on most of this, but we so the first episode. Yeah. The first episode, we had the kind of break in between the first part of the exam and the second part of the exam, where we got to see all of our newfound mage friends, characters, whatever, in their downtime for the day. None of that really made me care about them anymore, quite honestly.
It doesn't work. Like the best parts of that episode are, the part where Frieren and Fern meet up with Stark again, and Stark has done the thing that we have all done when our parents go on vacation and leave us at home. And because our parents are traveling overseas and the dates are different, you have mistaken which day they are coming back from the vacation. And so they are opening the door at like 2:30 p.m. and you're like, oh shit, I thought they were coming home tomorrow.
Right. Or from my perspective, even now, if I have a couple of days off of work, I become nocturnal, basically.
Yeah.
So like, he's like, they're like knocking on the door, and it's like 5 o'clock in the evening or something. The sun's going down, and
he's just waking up.
He's like just waking up.
Stark just woke up.
Yeah.
I have to say as well, like, I know this point has been made several times in the previous episodes, but I was not on those. It's so jarring to go from like the like relatively subdued character design to just this battle royale where everybody looks like a Bleach extra. Like, it's very weird, kind of like shift in sort of like when what's the name of Frieren's two hangers on in her group, like where they just showed up and was like, oh, it's an anime. Because like one of them is a gothic Lolita and the other one is wearing thigh-high boots and booty shorts, and I was like, "Oh, we just like radically shifted paradigm here."
I mean that continues to be the feeling about this arc, for better or worse. Is like this is a paradigm shift, right? Like we have fundamentally changed genres for the duration of this arc, and I think
will for me,
go ahead.
For me, like. I don't even think that the shift is so much the problem as like they're dumping all these characters on us that, like I said, I don't like any of them. Like even what's the old guy's name?
Denkin.
Like he's interesting. Like he's an interesting character, but like I don't know if I don't know if I like him. I don't know, but everyone else is just like anime cliche, whatever. And there's so many of them that are just like, I don't care about any of you. Half of them I actively dislike. And
right.
I mean, Denkin is also meant to be the bad guy, so he's meant to be interesting, but not necessarily likable, right? Or if not the bad guy, he is at least antagonistic.
So I think he works, but the rest of them are just like, a lot of them, they want you to like care or be interested. Like, look, I know a lot of people are thirsty for the murder girl. Even
of course they are. She's a murder girl.
And look, we love ourselves a problematic waifu around here. Even I can't get into her. I don't know, but that to me kind of feels like the largest of the problems with this arc to me. Whereas I don't love the tonal shift either, but I can kind of put up with. I think I could put up with that if we were still like getting interesting, character stories and.
In many ways, I kind of get why, for the first part of the exam, they split up Frieren and Fern, because, the gimmick there is them having to work in a, like, party composition that they are not familiar with.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, once you put them back together in the second test, it kind of works better just because, like, okay, now we are back to the dynamic we are used to. And... the problem, of course, then just becomes anytime the camera is not focused on them, right? It's like, all right, let's see what this group is up to.
Yeah.
And you must understand, Jill, the version we were being shown in the anime is already way better than the manga. Like, because at least the anime has the benefit of, like, really, really slick production value.
It looks great.
Like, it can show... what's her name? Like kung fu fighting.
Yes, Lao Fun.
Like the action has been good generally.
Yes,
like
let me be clear. All these fights, all these cool fights that you're like, man, these are some really good looking fights. They don't exist in the manga, or if they do,
they're like one panel, right?
It's a one panel shot of like Denkin firing a beam, and then they cut to the end of the fight. Like the anime is doing so much heavy lifting anytime a fight happens during this arc, and. That's not to say that, a good fight can redeem bad writing, but more like, well, a good fight can at least act as a, like, release valve
yes,
in the middle of what is an otherwise, like, kind of middling story.
Right, because I'm, like, watching, when we get into episode 2, that's when they start the second part of the test, and they have to go to the bottom of this mysterious dungeon, and that's where a lot of the action happens. And I'm like, whatever characters that aren't Frieren, the Frieren and Fern part's very funny. their part,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like that was fun. Like when nobody taking this test would be dumb enough to fall for a mimic. Cut to Frieren sticking her head in the mimic is
Yes,
very
of
funny.
course.
Yes.
But the other parties, I'm like, oh, all right. I guess it's their turn to be on camera. And as I'm getting bored or frustrated or whatever, magic lasers.
Yes.
So that does that does help.
Yeah, I will say they at least do throw a fun little curveball at the end of this episode, right? With the reveal that one of the traps in this dungeon is like doppelgangers.
Summons copies of you. Yeah.
And naturally, the story takes this to its logical conclusion of who is the worst possible person the doppelganger could copy, and it's Frieren, right? It's your relatively convenient non-brainwash way to turn Frieren into a temporary antagonist, and it's kind of the first time in the story where you kind of feel like there might be some real stakes here because you are watching a bunch of people who are not Frieren and Fern have to fight Frieren.
Also, like,
is the implication there that the copied Frieren is as powerful as the real Frieren?
Yeah.
Yes.
That seems.
They say that when the Kung Fu girl is fighting herself, they kind of explicitly say that the copy was just as powerful as you were.
Yes, they intentionally set that up early so that
right. But then why hasn't somebody twigged onto that idea and just created like an army of unstoppable clones?
Well, it's like attached to this dungeon, right? Like,
there's like a monster or something in there. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like, that does it. Like,
I guess
not
it's
something
just
anyone
like,
has control of. But
they have so gone out of their way to establish Frieren as like a world-destroyingly powerful mage that anything that's like, now we've created someone who's just as powerful seems a little sketch.
Well, temporarily, right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah, nevertheless.
I'm sure there's some kind of catch to it that we'll see later, but yeah.
I don't want to say this excuses the writing, but once you meet the regional manager of this magical DMV, you'll realize a lot of the plot holes in this arc can be waved away with a wizard did it, which is not a good excuse, but it is the excuse that Frieren decides to leverage.
Yeah.
Right.
And it sets up the classic "can you fight yourself" whatever thing.
Yeah, that's the real reason.
And as we've seen, nothing has been of any real danger to Frieren anyway, so the only thing that could be of danger to her is herself, right? So,
right. But I think the writing has been smart enough to generally acknowledge that and focus on, things which are not challenges to her in terms of raw power. Right. The show up to now has not really been about will Frieren overcome the baddie. There are other factors involved, and.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a lot smarter than saying, now we created a bad guy who's just as powerful as Frieren.
Yeah. Well,
to be clear, it's not like it's an antagonistic force. It is a roadblock in this dungeon.
Yeah, I know, but in terms of story structure.
Right.
There is the other whatever the other 1,000-year-old elf that they introduced.
Syria,
Yeah, that's running the test or whatever. I forget what her title was, but ultimately, and I hope we get back to a point where Frieren is not about the combat anyway, right? Like it's
it will happen eventually, but
we got a ways to go.
I will say that I've never not enjoyed watching the show. I still think the show is perfectly fine. It's just nowhere near as good as it was before.
Yeah. I'm not dreading watching Frieren every week like it's a task or anything. Like I'm still enjoying it. It's just I continue to be a little disappointed that this is not what we signed up for.
Right.
But,
like when Iro and I were tugging on our collars about where the Frieren anime would go, we were not talking about it in a sort of it goes to shit sort of thing. Just a some of those later chapters just don't quite hit.
They don't hit the same. Yeah. Well, it is still pretty solid. I do want to see how they get out of the predicament that they put themselves in at the end of the latest episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's still things going for it. I think it was kind of smart to have somebody else fight fake Frieren first than just cut to
Right.
Frieren fighting fake Frieren. So that does make it a little more interesting.
Sure, throw a few jobbers in there. To make
especially the one party that would probably have the best chance of dealing with it anyway. But, yeah. Maybe, like, would it have helped if they just trimmed down the number of new characters?
Probably.
Yeah.
Because there's so many.
We needed like one less full JRPG party.
Yeah.
Worth of people in this test.
So many, and they're going to stick around at least for a little while because they all have their own like bespoke designs and everything, right? Like
yes.
So they're not at least for another round or two. They're going to be around.
Except the weird Earthbender guy who has like the most generic design in history. Looks like an NPC could talk. Like,
I was going to say, is he the doomed to be the first to go? But we had the one girl go in this episode that was doomed to
right.
Exit by Gollum, I guess. But so, yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not much different than what we said last time, but we're still enjoying it on some level at least. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess I you know what? I'm not going to make any claims about the Apothecary Diaries. I was going to say something to the effect of shows continuing along as is, but I'm not. I will let you guys confirm if that is the case.
Speaking of shows continuing on as is.
No, I mean, I was...
Zig, you've not watched the next two episodes, which involve a plot climb.
If we want to talk about a show that has decided to escalate, in the great words of Shaquille O'Neal, I have to say to the Apothecary Diaries, I owe you an apology. I wasn't really familiar with your game. Wow, yeah, they escalate in quite some ways.
Yeah, so I'm curious to hear what you think about this because I already know everything that's going to happen.
Sure. Yeah. So the brief summary of the last few episodes of the Apothecary Diaries have been the buildup of multiple plot threads that have been kind of simmering in the background. Right, the true identity of Jinshi, Lakan's relationship to Mao Mao. The various like weird crimes that keep happening in the court that Mao Mao is uniquely suited to solve. The
disabled courtesan in the annex. Look.
Yes, the exile of one of the main concubines. Like, it's almost a little too much, but in the latest episode, they basically explain how each and every single one of those seemingly disconnected events that have happened for the last 11 episodes are all part of an interconnected conspiracy to, I guess, assassinate Jinshi, who is not, in fact, the head eunuch of the inner court, but, like, secret royalty. I guess, like, probably the true, like, prince, heir apparent to the dynasty throne.
Yeah, to be fair, that bit was fairly obvious from like
that part.
half a dozen episodes back.
No, but the part that's a little much is the every mystery.
Yes, all of the past like 5 mysteries have been like one piece of the puzzle.
Like they explained that. Well, you see, the fire in the warehouse was to steal tools related to ceremonial rites. And you see, the reason nobody noticed is because both of the managers of that warehouse were incapacitated in mysterious, seemingly disconnected ways, and thus nobody checked the inventory of what had been missing. And you see the case with
the special metal,
was because they wanted to create a metal with a low melting point.
Yep.
And that too is related to the conspiracy.
Okay.
And also you've been speaking to a cassette tape all along.
Yeah, basically. And it's it's a lot. But it broadly works in the sense that, like, I'll admit that, like, while I could tell that, okay, clearly these are building up to something, I did not see the ways in which they connected to each other. And in a good way, a mystery twist happens, right? Where once you realize where the mystery is headed,
Mhm.
you have that sudden like realization of like, oh, that's why that happened, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess yeah, in essence, we are seeing another like big, what I assume to be another like big status quo shift in the story now, with Mao Mao realizing the true identity of Jinshi, and also now coming into personal contact with Lakan, who is
Mhm.
the shady military officer who is likely her biological father.
Yeah. There's a good bit, and she knows who he is, because there's a good bit where Jinshi is like, so this guy named Lacan wants to talk to you, and she just glowers, or like, she has made expressions before, but makes just expression of pure contempt.
And
Right.
to understand, like what Ira's not mentioning
Mhm.
here is that they jump scare you with it.
Right.
Like,
That was yeah.
it appears on screen for 2 frames.
Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
it's one of those types of things. Of,
Right.
like, it flashes for such a short period of time, you're not even sure what you saw. But what
the
you do
Navy.
see is the reaction to it by the other
Mhm.
character who sees it. And
Yeah.
that
That
was
was-
very effective.
I like that, because in the manga it is like you get a whole page splash of just her expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I like how they handled that in the anime. It's just
Okay, I do have an important question. How are the chibi cutaways?
Still frequent, even in the latest episode. Even the latest episode where they're like, damn, you mean all those accidental deaths were actually intentional murders? And then Mama's like, oh boy, medicine. And it's like,
I mean, look, I appreciate a good escalation.
Yeah.
I think the show has needed like a solid central plot for a while, but also I want the things I like about it to be continued. So,
well, they still are. Yeah, it's I continue to be surprised by what this show's been doing.
I mean, I'm broadly encouraged to hear that, because I think that, my enjoyment of the Apothecary Diaries up to this point has largely been predicated on what it does rather than what it is, if that distinction makes sense.
Mhm.
I think that it's been much stronger in, the things like the goofs and kind of like the moment-to-moment action, rather than having like a compelling central plot or central dilemma. So to hear that they're, moving towards some sort of overarching plot, to me at least, is an interesting way to go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Also, in the latest, you do get the thing where I think we are so used to Mao just like talking to people above her and like socially, and then they're cool with it, or they
right, or they
are like,
acquiesce because
because
they
like,
understand the
sucked
validity
out.
of her
yeah,
statements.
they like her or know her or understand that, and you get the bit where she tries to do that to just some guard, and he just goes, "Well, you're it's not worth listening to you," and just clubs her on the side of the head.
just brutalizes her
And it's like,
physically.
Oh, right.
Right, like,
this is kind of the expected reaction, actually.
Yeah, it's not her
Right, like,
magic anime bubble that she's normally in.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I do like. I actually did rather. Enjoy is maybe the wrong word, but
Yeah.
I really did like the usage of this.
Mhm.
I enjoyed how violence was leveraged in this episode, because
Yeah.
it is one of those stark reminders that like what makes Mao Mao relatively like unique is her ability to speak up in situations which this society has like violently communicated to most of the people who live in it that you do not go above your station, and when you do, this is what happens to you.
Mhm.
And this is not to say that Mao Mao is like willfully naive about this, but it is one of those moments of a harsh meeting with reality
Yeah.
that, hey, your bullshit doesn't work on everybody.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, the people she's dealing with are like smart or rational enough to like swallow their pride and recognize like what she is saying is correct. And sometimes you're going to deal with a thug. And what a thug is going to do when you try to tell him off is he's just going to fucking beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
It's a good like punctuation to as many times as she has said, paid lip service to like, well, I'm just a lowly servant, so I shouldn't be saying this, but and so to have it like, no, yeah, this is why this
Right,
Yes, this
actually
guard is
means
saying,
something.
yes, you are a lowly servant and you shouldn't be saying this.
yeah.
Right. All right. Well, now that I'm caught up with everything else, maybe I should watch this. I don't know. It is a little intimidating now that I'm down a whole season.
Yeah.
And
What are you talking about, Joe? There's plenty of time. I mean, it's not like you have to. It's not like you're watching all of Vinland Saga in a month.
Well, as much as it sounds like you guys are enjoying this, I get the impression it is not Vinland Saga tier marathon it at all costs.
I would not rate it that highly.
Yeah. So, nevertheless, it has sounded good from what you guys have said. So, all right.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Dungeon Meshi, aka
Oh, yeah.
Delicious in Dungeon.
Still good.
Still good.
Dungeon Meshi.
You know,
Dungeon Meshi.
I would say this show is continuing to truck along, but I feel like for me, I've been enjoying it more, and it's like in subtle ways that the show has continued to like improve itself and build on itself.
Yeah.
Whereas on the surface, yeah, it looks like they're kind of doing the same type of adventures and everything.
Right.
But
I think these latest two episodes, 6 and 7, really do represent a like. I'm not going to say status quo shift because it is nothing as obvious as that.
Yeah, I
But
wouldn't
think these
call
last
it
two
that.
episodes. But I think
Yeah.
these last two episodes very much represent the like. Like in many ways, the real Dungeon Meshi starts here, right? Like this is like where you realize that all the things that like the story has kind of been slowly building up to are now kind of running at full speed, right?
Yeah.
Like the themes of like the dungeon as an ecosystem, the themes of the party dynamic, the themes of like what Fallen meant to these people. You know, the ways in which the dungeon is actually far more dangerous and oppressive than our like goofy crew might make it seem at times.
yeah,
Like it's all kind of like coming together and synergizing in really strong ways in these last two episodes.
Yeah.
The first episode we had like the living paintings,
Yes. And then the
And
mimic.
the-
Yeah.
the mimic, which interesting to basically make a mimic a giant crab. That was
Hermit
Oh,
crab,
it's so
yeah.
good. It's so good.
actually made a lot of sense.
So,
Which
sorry, go on, Joe.
go ahead, Zig.
Well, I was going to say I'm in broad agreement about the quality of the show, which is fantastic. I'm not sure that I entirely agree with you about its thematic weight, G. Like, I think I am primarily enjoying the show as a goofy comedy, and I don't really feel that I have gotten greater insight into the things that you were talking about over these last few episodes. Perhaps I'm not looking, but as somebody who is not familiar with the source material, that's my take on it. You know, don't get me wrong. I think it is a fantastic show. I think
We can
it is
see
one
where
of
that we can already like know where those threads are going.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like
Yeah,
Like, to me, it's kind of like, yes, you know, it's neat that like Senshi, that like we had this episode focusing on Chilchuck that gives a little bit more kind of like meat to his character, but not in the sense that it contributes to our greater understanding of, you know, the dungeon, the ecosystem, the plot, etc. It's neat because it is a focus episode on a character, you know.
yeah,
But I don't necessarily feel that I have a strong idea of the identity of the show beyond like fun comedy that riffs on a lot of common fantasy
Well,
and tabletop RPG tropes there. And again,
I do.
I'm not saying this is a diss. I'm just saying that that is the
Sure,
view that I have of it at the moment.
I mean, I guess you're right then. Maybe, you know, Iro and I have the benefit of hindsight, but, you know, I think, like, for example, episode 6, you know, the living paintings part, which is probably the, like, less visually striking of the two halves of that episode, does begin to, like, introduce this idea of, like, there is a history to this dungeon, right? Like,
Yes. Yeah.
it's very intentional that Lyles jumps to 3 different paintings, and they are all part of an interconnected history of a place, right? Like, you know, that he is essentially jumping to 3 different times in
Right.
history being portrayed by these paintings. And Lyles being Lyles, he doesn't really care about that. He's just trying to eat some food.
Right.
But-
Well, that's kind of the thing, right? I think that there are clearly like important parts of that. I mean, the identity of mysterious miniature elf person who is in the opening credits, so I know they're an important character, you know. But mostly that also just seems to me to be a joke, if that makes sense. Like that he is leaping through various time periods, but all he's doing is looking for a good meal.
Yeah,
Right,
I think
what it is like you've noticed the elf is like in that third painting. The elf goes, "Hey, what the hell's with you? I saw you
Yes.
100 years. I saw you in those other times.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, with that part, and again, as the other person with no prior knowledge about Dungeon Meshi, I also kind of didn't think too much about, other than the paintings being connected to history, having any connection with anything other than this one-off episode. But
it's just stuff to keep in mind for later.
Yeah, so I mean, it's different perspectives, I guess.
Yeah.
I think what I was saying to Zig's point, I kind of also feel that way to a certain degree, but I feel like I can also see them building, even if I don't fully understand the scope of where we're going with all this. Like I can see, especially for me, the thing that is like the party chemistry stuff. Because we get. So like the second we'll throw in the second episode because we can kind of, I guess, talk about them both at the same time. But you know, the second episode we get with the Kelpie and I guess that was like the real main part of the episode.
The Kraken and the mermaids.
Yeah, they kind of goes into the Kraken and the water stuff. Right?
The water zone.
The water monsters.
Water zone. Yeah,
the water zone.
I think that, you know, just quickly, I think that was the most character-focused episode yet as well.
Yeah, but I think having it now, you know, at this point, this is 7 episodes in when this happens, I appreciate that, like, the party chemistry is like the one of the main appeals to me, because I appreciate everybody has had an opportunity to be both right and wrong, if that makes sense.
Right, yes.
Absolutely.
So like somebody like Senshi, who, you know, has a ton of knowledge and experience with the dungeon, and a lot of times it sounds like he's everything he says is going to be correct, and you know poor young naive Marcel is going to be, you know, proven wrong every episode. Like, that's
kind of been the joke format.
And then the Kelpie just immediately drags him under water.
Yeah, and it's not like the first time this has happened with Senshi, but I think it's the most significant, where it's like,
right. Well, because it's in many ways like this. The theme of like this storyline is that Senshi has sort of taken to viewing himself as like, you know, a like D&D ranger, right? The protector
like keeper,
of the dungeon, the keeper of the ecosystem, and that it is through his tireless efforts that the dungeon's ecosystem remains in balance, and he can show that by his kinship with the animals of the environment, right? And it's kind of a fun quote unquote betrayal of like, hey, you can like you can befriend a wild animal to an extent. Like, you can form a non-hostile relationship, but at the end of the day, it is not a domesticated creature. And
yeah.
You know,
also, some animals are just dicks.
Yeah, and so like, yeah, right. So, I guess my broader point is like, you know, you can see everybody's strengths and weaknesses, and therefore why they need each other and why they would bond together, right?
Yes.
And then you kind of like almost have the intentional compare and contrast of the other party that keeps dying in the dungeon.
Yeah. So that's an element that I think was noticeable from episode 1, but until you've had time to see them actually do it, you don't really appreciate how good they are at it, you know, until you've had some time to see it.
Along with a lot of ensemble shows, sometimes you find yourself asking like, why the hell are these people still hanging out together? Right. And yeah, in Dungeon Meshi, it's very clear why these people are hanging out together.
Freaks who like to eat things.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And it has been fun again, seeing the other party appear again. In contrast, I guess. Yeah. Although I guess we don't. This time we didn't really see much of them at all, other than being dead, right? But
this is where some of like Dungeon Meshi as an adaptation is like, you can feel the briskness of the pace.
Yeah.
The original manga shows how they get killed, and
Okay.
it's, I wouldn't say it's like vital to the story, but like
It helps characterize them. Like,
yes, because you see why they get killed.
yeah.
Whereas here, it kind of leans more into the angle of just like, you just need to understand that this party is composed similarly to the hero's party, but just not as good.
Yeah.
Right, and also, like, I think that although you lose depth by not having the reason why they killed, in a certain way it makes the joke funnier, right? Because the punchline is snappier to a certain
Yes, it's
extent.
a hard cut
So,
to their corpses.
It's like,
in the
and they're
water.
dead, and Chilchuk's like, how the hell did they get ahead of us?
right.
Yeah,
And- yeah.
that is a good bit.
So I think, that might be influencing my perception somewhat as well, because clearly as a faster, brisker adaptation of the material,
Mhm.
I think that, my impression is that Trigger is leaning into the comedy a little harder than the original might have. And certainly you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But, and to the show's credit, and I think Joel talking about the last episode helped me realize this. I think perhaps I've not been giving them enough credit for the character building as plot, because you're right, the character building has been exemplary and they've done a really good job of fleshing out these characters. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily feel sort of the bones of a deeper story yet, and I have faith that they will appear because because I trust you guys and because the story is so acclaimed and everybody loves it so much. I'm just saying that I don't see it yet.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what? Shout outs to that sequence with the crab in episode 6.
I
Man,
know. Oh.
like, it's so bouncy. I love it. Like, just every time
Yeah.
this show like turns on the trigger a little bit, it's
There's
like
generally at least one sequence an episode where you're
Yeah.
like, oh, right.
Yeah.
like there's
this is
that, or
right.
there's like when the Kraken rises out of the water in episode 7, and you're like,
Mhm.
yup, those are some Yoshinari like water effects. Like that's how Yoshinari draws water.
Yeah, this is
Yo.
definitely a Trigger show where they only make it look cheap when they want to.
Yes.
Yes.
On
When it's
purpose.
funny, yes.
Yeah.
I will say shout outs, just obviously I'm always gonna like give a shout out to Trigger when they do it right, but I do need to give credit where it's due. Episode 6 was apparently outsourced to
Okay.
a studio called Enishiya, who I guess based on my research is like mostly an outsourcing studio. They kind of work with other, like, they've worked on other productions.
Yeah.
According to their article in ANN, like they
That's how a lot of studios get started.
exactly
before they get their own
Their
production, right?
credits list is pretty short, but for example, they helped out on Wonder Egg Priority.
Okay.
Do It Yourself.
There's a show which
Um,
needed it.
Okay. Those are both
Phoenix
nice looking.
Eden 17. They are going to
I
be
don't remember that
working on the new Spice and Wolf anime that's coming out.
All right.
Interesting.
Right, that's a thing.
So yeah, and I guess like I just want to give a shout out because I think normally when we hear, oh, this episode was outsourced, right, we're like, it went to the B team, right?
Right.
Whereas like I don't know, y'all, these Enishiya guys, they seem to have it.
Those shots of Chilchuk running for the buttons were really fantastic.
Extreme,
Yeah.
very, very fun. Just really, really well
Yeah,
done.
they didn't miss a beat. I mean, it fit perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
looked
it looked
very
great.
much like the house style.
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, just like talk about like, I mean, it's like we talk about like the Trigger House style, but for these outsourcers to nail some of these bits, like the Chilchuk flashback of why he hates mimics, and like
Mhm.
there's the third and final chest where the twist is it's not a mimic, it's simply trapped, and
You're right.
it explodes, and like it does the thing of like it explodes and then hits a freeze frame, and then the
Right.
footage cuts out as if there was a film camera there.
Like security
Right.
camera. Yeah. Like,
It's like that's not in the manga. That's original. It's just
Yeah.
really good
They-
touch. Yeah.
a very good touch. But
Uh,
yeah. I don't know. Dungeon Meshi. It's continues to.
Yeah. I mean, would you say those like the overall adaptation has been good in that way, because I mean those do kind of change the mood a bit, you know, like it's a different vibe when you're adding silly kind of fourth wall breaking gags and stuff like that.
I think,
like,
so
is that mostly for the show's benefit
I
when
think
we get those kinds
for
of things?
the show specifically, that being the televised animated series Dungeon Meshi, I think they are,
Right.
because I will say that Dungeon Meshi the manga very rarely engages in fourth wall breaking humor. Like,
Right.
it's basically never.
Right.
And I think in many ways, what the choice Trigger has made with the Dungeon Meshi anime is like, hey, we're here to make a fantasy comedy, and many of the tricks that Ryoko Kui utilized in the manga may not work if adapted one-to-one to anime, right? Because like many of the incidental gags in the Dungeon Meshi manga are like, you know, it's like an offhand comment said by a character in the background. It's something written in the margin of the page. You know, it's a like one panel gag that like, you know, it's the thing of like a one panel gag in a manga. Like, you can sort of, you can dial your own pace of reading it, if that makes sense.
A good example is the like washing Senchi's beard out is like a montage in the anime, but the way it's, which is very different from how it's paced out in the manga, right?
Right. And so I think like there are moments where like I think Trigger recognizes that like a joke might actually hit better if punched up for the medium, and
Right.
So
and the other thing I would say is that like they're not fourth wall breaking in the sense that the characters are turning to look at the camera and going, by the way, this is a television show. You know, it's more they're playing games with the medium a little.
Right.
It's a more subtle form of that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, and like, because like to go the other way around, I do, you know, like, you know, criticism is maybe a strong word, but like I do sometimes feel like Trigger sometimes does slightly misstep with his adaptation of when it does faithfully adapt a joke too well, but the medium is different. You know, like for example, in episode 7, where like Chilchuk and Laios are having the argument about like what.
Where's the line
counts,
of where to eat people?
What is a
or
monster and what is a like sentient creature?
Right, when you're crossing into cannibalism, right? It's
right, and
there's that part who cares?
Right, and there's that part where Chilchuk is like running the numbers in his head, right? And there's like that like rapidly panning shot of like the things he's thinking about. And in the manga, like that's a whole page where like he's bringing up various points in his head, like, wait, mermen use tridents. Does that imply they know how they
blacksmithing?
Have
question mark?
Does that imply technology?
Right.
And it's really good because you get to sit there and like linger in it with Chilchuk. But in the anime, it pans so quickly you don't have time to read it. So, you know, it's like I think there are jokes like that don't land quite as well because they don't really adapt it as well for the medium.
Yeah. That's a minor thing though at that point.
Very
I think
minor,
you still get the point, right? Like but
I think that is why I do actually really love the places where Trigger has like, you know, been more liberal with the adaptation. Because I mean, they're a funny studio. They know how to do good jokes. So like you can kind of trust them to translate it well in their own way.
Yeah.
I think a truly great adaptation adapts the spirit of the original, if not necessarily the letter. You know, sometimes you are going to have to make changes to a different medium, and by all accounts, they are preserving the essential thrust of the original story, the original jokes, but, you know, massaging them to better fit the medium they now find themselves in.
Definitely.
Iro, were you going to say something?
No. No, just, agree.
Okay.
It's a great show. I'm enjoying the touches they are adding, you know, like it's like G was saying, it's a trade-off, right? It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just it is different for the medium.
Yeah.
And perhaps the fact that it is different from the medium means that it's a good adaptation, right?
Yeah. And just to hedge my criticism one more time, I will say I still think it is the best show this season by a country mile. I'm having a huge amount of fun with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I would agree with that with one potential challenger, which we will get to later. But
yeah, I was gonna say, look, I've been loving Dungeon Meshi. There's another show on this list that's
okay. Let me put it this way: this one certainly has. It's like the Spy Family effect, broadest appeal.
Yes,
I would recommend this to most people. Sort of type of show.
The other good show on this list
were robots.
is
as for my personal enjoyment, there's a contender for that, but we'll get to that later. It's a good show, one way or the other. Okay, let's talk about Sengoku Youko.
Yeah.
I remind me, how many episodes is this going to be?
39.
Okay. It's 39. We're like like episode 6 or 6, I think we left off.
I believe
something
so.
like that.
Yeah.
Is there and you guys know better because you've read the manga.
Oh boy.
Is there any reason why this feels so rushed at episode 6 when we've got 3 seasons?
Oh man, they are cutting. They are cutting. They are condensing still.
Oh yeah.
Do
Because
you think that's...
I checked some of my volumes, some of the early stuff, and I went, oh god, they skipped this whole chapter.
Do you think that's necessary to fit the story?
Like, yes, parentheses, rueful, like, you know, like,
yes, but there's no choice. What are you gonna do about it?
If we're doing like, because I think the idea
should be should have been a 4-course show.
At the very least, I would say like 42. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just 37 is still not enough for the length of the story, right? Because we are talking about a full length.
This is as long as Dungeon Meshi, and chapter wise, and Dungeon Meshi will probably get 4 cours, right? Total.
Yes. Like this is a full length shonen series, you know? You certainly don't imagine like My Hero Academia ending in 37 episodes, right? And
maybe it's been a long time since I've watched a series this long, or I don't know, but yeah, these two episodes felt pretty rushed.
Yes.
We had the first one with Samurai Dude's sister showing up, right?
Yes.
That was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and they kind of condensed down.
You'll miss it. Stuff.
Yeah, they kind of condensed down an entire like dramatic. I don't know how much more happened in that, but it seemed to go pretty quick. Where we went through this whole arc of meeting his sister to her like dying in the span.
She is a parallel to Shakuyaku, to Shakugan, because she also got a rock monster put in her, but does not cooperate with it. Right, just subsumed it.
Yeah.
So that's supposed
we
to
also
be
get introduced to and this is one of those areas where like Mizukami does continue to delight as like a conventional author who uses unconventional tricks.
Yes.
Is like, you think, oh, we're gonna fight another one of the Elite Four,
the 4 beast generals,
and so it's like, oh, okay, here's the girl one,
the first one, and
you know, you're and as we all know in shonen terms, the first one is the weakest one, right? Like she was the weakest of the 4.
Then we'll fight them all up in sequence, or whatever.
And then the strongest of the 4 just shows up.
Yeah, and kills her, right? Just punches her to pieces. Yeah,
and it's like, sorry, you have to fight me now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's not a win for our heroes. Our heroes have to flee, like, outright. Like, there's no like, it's none of that. Like, we managed to land one punch on him. It's like, no, we are completely outclassed.
And like a Jinka, who has been your fucking edgelord, I'm so cool and strong guy. The whole show goes, oh fuck, a dragon.
Yeah, he's terrified.
So to run away.
He's the one who freaks out the most. Honestly.
Yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know. It made it by the time we got to the end of the episode when his sister's dying. Like, it's supposed to be, it felt like it's supposed to be this emotional moment, and it was like, we didn't have time for this, man.
Right.
Like,
I think
it comes dangerously close to being unintentionally comical.
Right. I think what salvages that bit for me, because like, yes, we barely know this character, but I think what salvages it for me is like, it thinks that. It seems like she's going to reach some sort of emotional reconciliation with him, and then she's just like, Damn, you really don't know any. You really, you're too far gone, brother. I guess I'm gonna drag you back. All right,
Yeah.
like you do not get that reconciliation. She just has to be put down, right?
I feel
So
like,
the Mizukami, like she was saying, spin on normal things. Things maybe not going a normal plot scenario going in a way that you perhaps did not expect. Like that stuff is there.
yeah, there's always a certain playfulness to the way he plots out events.
Yeah.
I will say, to speak to like the feeling you have though, like I think it's hard to avoid the reality that like Sengoku Youko is meant to feel. I mean, just to compare to like Dungeon Meshi, it's meant to feel like an adventure, right? Like we were meant to follow this party on their quest, and I think because of how quickly they are pacing things, we don't. I mean, yeah, like to compare them, like. The thing that Dungeon Meshi kind of does fairly smartly is every episode will in some way explain the dynamic of why these people are hanging out. And I think where the adaptation of Sengoku Youko is kind of failing at source material is we're not getting enough of that, like, I don't know, hang-outitude.
Yeah.
Right? The sense that, like, why would Jinka put up with Shinsuke? Or why is Shinsuke still here? Or whatever, right? It's
Yeah, and I feel like
have enough time to build that rapport.
Yeah,
I feel like this Dungeon Meshi and maybe even Frieren to a certain degree kind of have the same potential strengths where the your group dynamic is your strength, right?
Yes,
and it's interesting seeing all three of those shows this season handle it to varying degrees of success. But in this one, again, as someone who has not read the manga, like I don't feel I see on screen the characters bonding, but like if I were to compare to all those things I just said about Dungeon Meshi, I don't see those things happening. And I think that might be what you're saying, G, where we don't just have the screen time where we're seeing them hang out and just do normal things together, right?
Right. Like there's that moment in the second of these two episodes where Tama visits the village where
yes,
it's
like sealed away, right?
Yeah, it's been sealed away, right? And she, it's kind of the Tom, only Tom. It's one of those classic, only this character can solve the issue this week kind of thing, right? Like, because Tom up till now has been sort of the generic Yankee girl, like, I'm gonna unite the world with love and peace, right? And this episode kind of shows what drives her desire to unite, like, the
Katawara.
Humans in the Katawara, right? Like, why is she so driven by this desire to see peace between them, And you get that in this episode, but also, you probably don't even know Tama that well at this point, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a weakness, and I think there's a number of interesting creative choices there. I think it's interesting that they, for example, they don't choose to lean into the horror aspect of it so much and instead focus on Tama, and I think that's a solid choice. But yeah, it comes off a little bit glib because we don't know her that well ourselves.
Yeah, and that was like I talked about last time. As I'm getting older, perhaps my view of Mizukami's optimism is a little has become a bit tainted.
You don't understand. No. We're becoming the bitter old men
I'm trying so hard to fight it off, but like
he doesn't want us to become that. That's why he writes these stories.
I know. So maybe I need to keep watching to keep myself
filled with blessings.
Yeah.
Okay. Clearly, what we all need to do is we all just need to read Spirit Circle by the next podcast, and we'll all be refilled with optimism for the future.
But I mean, when she just kind of hugs it out with the monster at the end, and I'm like, just part of me is like, I don't know, man.
I guess I was kind of okay with that because, Mizukami's work has always been big and broad and cartoony. Brackets positive, so
yeah, and I wouldn't want them to like come in and slaughter the monster or whatever. Like I don't know. I don't know if I wouldn't have done it any differently. Just I can feel the cranky old man creeping up in me, and I have to fight it off. But
right,
yeah.
I will say that for me, at least, one of the aspects of this show I have really enjoyed is the constant parade of, well, this week here's a weird guy. And
Yeah.
like, I don't really want to undersell that, because it is enjoyable to see this sort of, it's not exactly throwback, but it definitely has some elements of kind of like the early 2000s trend towards, Naruto, Bleach, that kind of serialized storytelling. And this is the positive side of that, that, interesting, weird dudes are just constantly showing up, and I really like that. I think that's fun
we get
and cool, and you get a lot of...
we get Doran, the Tiger Man.
Yep, he's great. You get something a little different there.
In almost a direct contrast to the other members of the Elite Four they face, right? This one's just like, I don't know, you want to have a drink, I guess?
We'll have a drinking contest.
I'll kill you later.
Jinun is this, like, stoic-driven juggernaut of a man, and then we also have Reshin, who is a hip-hop gangsta man.
God, yes, the one just dropping random English phrases, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there's a dude who just turned into a sack full of knives.
Yeah, that's him.
Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like there is some real fun pulp sensibility there that's just kind of like tickles a very base part of my brain.
Yeah.
I really worry about the pacing, because oof. It's like, yeah. It is supposed to be like a long burn, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, how much do you think they will slow things down once the shift happens? Like, do you think they're doing that? Do you think they're rushing to get to that moment sooner?
I think,
or is that just a cope?
Little A, little B, right?
Yeah.
It's like
it's going to be just as fast paced even after the shift.
Probably. We say the shift as if it's not just. I don't know. I read some of the manga, and I'm like, oh, there's way more that happens before that than I remember. And I'm like, oh, geez, how are they going to do this? How are we going to get through this? But I don't know. I think it's good.
I guess we take what we can get, right? Because the story that goes with Sengoku Youko is that it was originally going to be a 2-course show.
Yes. Oh, no way.
The president of White Fox personally fought to extend it to 3 cours.
Yeah.
So we are all, because he was such a big fan of the original story. Mm-hmm. So as much as we are like hemming and hawing about this adaptation, this is already the like best possible version of it we could get under the specific circumstances of its creation.
I mean, if that's true, it may also be that we are seeing some episodes that were boarded for at the faster pace, right? Like,
true.
I have absolutely no inside knowledge to verify that.
That makes sense.
But I'm just saying it's a possibility.
Yeah. They might have started writing it for 24 and then had more later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't throw out work you've already done.
Yeah. So, I'm still here. I'm still with this.
I'm grasping
hanging
your
in
ankle,
there.
You know.
Yeah, I was grasping my ankle as I'm slowly trying to inch away backwards out of this.
I think I'm several notches above you. I'm having fun. I think that I would like more substance soon, but at the moment I am having fun with what's on.
Yeah, I think, Zig, the things that you were pointing to that you liked as sort of like the classic shonen kind of weird guys showing up stuff, I historically do not care about that stuff as much. So that's not really necessarily helping me. I'm here for the Mizukami, and it's in there somewhere. I can see it.
The other classic Mizukami thing is that it takes a while for his stuff to blossom.
Yeah,
right?
that's something we've talked about before.
I wouldn't exactly describe as any of his works that I've seen as like strong out of the gate. And we've talked about that before. Like, I don't know how you would fix that. Like, that's just is what it is. Like, to get the payoffs the big payoffs that he has, you have to take time, and there's just no way around it that I can think of. So, okay, well, a show that I did not continue watching
Metallic Rouge.
I should offer an anecdote about this, which is I watched the first 2 episodes, thought episode 2 was pretty fun, and then promptly completely forgot about it until I saw it on the schedule here. So
I personally believe that was for the best because I dropped it at episode 3.
oof.
But I heard there was a bit of a bright spot this week. But
yeah,
G and Iro, you're still watching if you want to tell us about it.
Episode 5 was the weird Enter the Mind's Eye episode, right?
Yeah, in many ways, these 2 episodes are actually a perfect duo to compare and contrast what is working and what is not about Metallic Rouge.
Yeah.
So episode 5 is kind of the last of the robot people ghetto arc that we have been subjected to for the last 3 episodes, in which Rouge is taken prisoner by this carnival-themed puppet master guy who's
trying to read her memories to get some kind of information, right?
Yeah. And so it does the whole battle in the mind's eye, confronted with past traumas, oh no, Rouge's backstory, etc. stuff. Trying to do all that very I don't know, post-Ava heady anime stuff.
Yep.
That
Rouge must confront all of her previous kills or whatever.
And it doesn't work. It doesn't. It's who cares? It's just a rehash of when she fought the dude from last episode who could make illusions.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just that we've turned that from a physical fight into a metaphysical one, I guess. I don't know. I don't know why we needed to repeat this, honestly.
It certainly sounds like they're treading over exactly the same ground again.
Yeah, it's continuing to do the thing of, hey guys, do you get it? Rouge is a robot, and she's been tasked with killing other robots, but some of those robots don't want to be killed.
Does she truly have freedom?
It's
or is she just a tool?
I don't have emotions.
We get it.
I don't have emotions, and sometimes that makes me very sad.
Yeah, basically. So, not a very good episode.
She fights a weird gothic Lolita lady.
Yeah, I mean, it's anime.
Yeah.
There's a mysterious, in very almost Toku sensibility, a black writer, a mysterious robot clad in dark who kind of helps out but doesn't reveal their identity. And
right, that's right. That guy was there.
who could this guy be? Okay, I will admit he was kind of cool because his power was just sprouting shotguns out of his chest, which hey, look, that's kind of badass.
Yeah,
but no, otherwise not a great episode. And then we get to episode 6, where the premise is that they are now taking a ship back to Earth. Yep. Right, they were on Mars hunting down the Immortal 9, and they need to report back to HQ on Earth.
So we're hitching a ride on this luxury liner back Earth.
Yep. And hey, you know what a cruise liner is? It's a locked room. And and what one of the villain's powers is impersonation. Yep. And so the episode 6 is just this really entertaining slapdash chase through this cruise liner as the Jokerized evil cyborg guy, the one with the Coke bottle glasses who looks like Vash the Stampede, is just transforming into different people and then just murdering random people on the ship for kicks.
So he's basically the T-1000?
Yeah, basically. But without even any stated goal, he's just I'm just killing people because that's what I do best. Can you stop me, Rouge? And it's somehow reducing the conflict to something so base,
so
banal, works hugely in Metallic Rouge's favor, because then it just turns into, we gotta stop the bad guy, and the bad guy has a neat gimmick.
Yep.
They're chasing after him.
Sometimes simplicity is the best option, right?
And yeah, exactly, right? And this is the part where we bring up that how this show has was it Carol and Tuesday?
Yes. It sure
people
does.
who worked on it.
Energy,
Well, it had one more person from Carol and Tuesday, and that's Kimiko Ueno,
yes,
aka one of the best anime screenwriters in the business.
So who looked it up? Also did episode 2, the fun episode.
Yeah,
the
episode.
Yeah, the goofy episode.
These two episodes that have like actual character dynamics.
Man, remember how they had like the psycho driver granny in that second episode?
Oh man, Speed Grandma.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
If you go back to 2 episodes ago, that was the last time I was enjoying Metallic Rouge.
Iro, do you have the short list of Kimiko Ueno's past credits?
A bunch of episodes of Space Dandy, the zombie episode, the race episode, Meow's Whole Planet episode, the Alternate Dimension Cruise episode, the Rock Band episode.
Shout out to the Meow's Home Planet episode where they seem like they're about to work out they're in a time loop, but they miss it completely and the narrator has to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, also worked on many of the best. Yes, many of the best episodes of Little Witch Academia.
Yep, the Broom Race episode, the one where they go inside Susie's mind.
Yes, the legendary contender for best baseball episode of all time from BNA.
Yeah. And then any episode of Carol and Tuesday with the Idea scammer AI robot.
Shitty robot.
Every episode where that guy showed up was a Kimiko Ueno episode.
So the point is,
all the good episodes of Carol and Tuesday.
Yes. So this is a writer who has like clearly a fantastic sense of humor, a really strong knack for just writing really punchy good jokes. And that's what makes episode 6 so good, is because like it's just the hijinks of Rouge and Naomi failing to catch this guy. You know, some of the jokes are a little bit more predictable than others, but like the things like the execution and the timing is perfect, right? Like they do the classic thing of evil Joker guy impersonates Rouge, and then they run to a different room and Naomi catches up and they're fighting each other, and each of them he's like, Naomi, shoot the other one, right? And so Naomi's like, all right, I'm going to ask you a question, right? And it's like, she like says this like kind of complicated like math equation, right? And
and then you already know where this gives the right answer.
Exactly.
Right?
You already know where this is going, right? Because Rouge is too stupid to know how to do basic math.
She doesn't give a shit. Yeah.
You know, it's a good joke. And then
the joke also, it's like, because they've been sort of undercover this whole show, right?
Yes.
And like they get kicked out of the pool or whatever, and the next shot is them dripping wet, showing up at like investigation room base and being like, "Here's my badge. We're with the government. I'm fucking done with this shit."
Right? Because
we're cooperating.
Because a recurring theme throughout this story has been that like there has been a like civilian cop who has like suspected that Rouge and Naomi are government spooks but can't prove it. And the idea that this is how they finally reveal it is that they are just so exasperated dealing with this annoying Joker man that this is the thing that makes them break their cover. They're like, fuck it, we're government spooks, you were right, just let us take care of this guy.
Yeah.
And then the way they take care of this guy, so they find out that, Joker can change his form, but he cannot change his mass, and he weighs exactly 82.2 kilograms. And so
that's
what they
pretty
do
light for a robot.
I guess so, yeah. Well, anyways, so the point is, like,
put everyone who's 88.2 kilograms into a lineup.
Person who weighs exactly this much into a room. And you think, and Naomi opens her mouth and she's like, and now we're going to interrogate you, and through the power of deduction, we're going to cross-reference your, the contradictions in your statements to find out which one of you is the real one. And then Rouge
just
steps
beat the
up.
Shit out of them.
Yes, Rouge says, all of you except one of you is a human being. I'm going to punch each one of you so hard that you might die. Only the robot is strong enough to survive this punch. Line up. Just starts
punching.
Yeah, just starts punching everyone in a lineup, and it does the almost Trigger-esque thing of it doesn't show the punch. It shows Naomi's reaction, but it cuts frame by frame, punctuated by a punch noise. As her expression grows increasingly more exasperated with the situation. And then the best part, the last thing in the lineup, is this weedy looking nerd guy, and they're like, this guy weighs 82.2 kilograms. They're like, no, not him.
His giant Saint Bernard.
His giant Saint Bernard. And this dude's like, you're gonna punch. Oh my god, what's this dog's name?
Punch Rubens, my precious dog.
Yes, you're gonna punch Rubens, and it does the perfect thing of it just holds on Rouge's
shot, reverse shot with the dog, right?
Yeah, like static face, and this dog just giving goofy dog grin, and then just hard cuts to just Rouge putting her whole body into the meanest ass kick you have ever seen, right into this dog's head.
Hell yeah. We actually get to see her kick the dog in the head.
Yeah!
It's really funny.
It's really good. And of course it's Joker. It's, he was...
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course it was.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, man, if this show had this energy all the time...
mean, that's the problem, right? Next episode's going to suck again.
Because, hey, guess what? Do you know how this episode literally ends? It turns out that Naomi was a double agent.
Oh, my God.
Betrays Rouge at the end of the episode.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
Oh.
I don't... I know nobody who works in anime actually listens to this podcast.
I know,
but
right?
Hey, I need to put this energy out there. Why... How come Kimiko Ueno doesn't write whole shows?
She's doing Dungeon Meshi.
Oh shit! Yeah, she is doing Dungeon Meshi. What a good anime, huh? No, seriously, why do we?
She's done a couple, but they've been like Ikemen comedy shows, right? That we don't watch.
Maybe the freelancing pays better.
Maybe
I guess just like why would you have Kimiko? Why would you bring in this immensely talented comedy writer to punch up like 2 or 3 episodes of otherwise dog shit anime?
Because the answer is that Bones have never actually understood how to make good originals, right? Like,
no, of course.
Yeah.
But also the running joke about every Bones original is that it's incredibly po-faced and unfun. Right, if you think about fucking Listeners, Captain Earth, all of this stuff.
Yeah, but it's like I completely agree, Zig. But like they still brought her on for a couple of episodes, so it's like they kind of know what she's capable of. It's
that's a stopped clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, of course. It's just like y'all got to give y'all got to give this woman more work. Like you got to have her write entire shows, man. Like stop it with this. Show featuring Kimiko Ueno for 2 episodes.
I just remember I was watching Curl on Tuesday and being like, wow, that episode where they make a music video was really good. And then like 4 episodes were just like, I'm not really feeling it. And then you have like American Idol episode where you have all these wackadoo singers.
Oh god, those guys were so good.
And like, wow, the show was really fun.
That was really good.
And then, I think that is around where we just started to discover Kimiko.
Yeah, I think that's around when I was like, hold on, what the hell's going on?
Ira, you just single-handedly reminded me. You just single-handedly reminded me how much I actually watched of Carol and Tuesday.
Right.
I blocked so much of it out of my mind. I thought I only watched like the first 2 episodes, but now that you're mentioning it, I was like, oh, I watched most of that show.
And then like there's the episode where the fucking shitty like musician dude like has his house repossessed or whatever.
Oh yeah.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like joking aside, like this is like they have followed the textbook to perfection of, Bones has a new show, it looks great, and there's kind of an interesting premise that could go some cool directions if they maybe experimented with it, and then it's just the most boring shit in the universe.
I mean, we said it was going to happen before the show aired.
Because it has become so predictable.
Yeah.
The episode does end with a legitimately good fight between Rouge and Joker, where
the action
they're like magnetized to the outside of the ship and fighting.
Yeah, like
space,
she's finally cornered him, and he's like, "All right, I'll fight you for real." And she pulls off the fucking Frieza Destructo disc, like surprise attack.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah.
The show can be. It just isn't most of the time.
Yeah. Just
well, next episode, you guys can report back about how episode 7 and 8 or whatever were terrible.
I bet it's a lot of angsting about being betrayed.
Yeah, no shit.
How Rouge is struggling with her identity again because she thought she found a friend or whatever, and anyway, and probably has trust issues. And okay, I'm going to stop. But yep, at least you got one moment of fun out of it. Maybe she'll do another episode before the whole thing is over.
It'd be nice. Get some more fun in.
Yeah.
It'd sure be nice to have a show where we could have fun.
What's next up from picking a dog? Punching a child, right?
A show that's fun, huh?
Huh? What?
Yeah.
A show that literally never misses, maybe?
Well, let's talk about Bang Brave, Bang Bravern. So, just to catch up, I did catch up. I'm totally caught up with this now.
Yeah.
Oh, you never struck me as a real robot kind of guy.
Not because this is a real robot anime. This is the best comedy I've watched in a long time.
We've been watching...
I mean, yeah, it's a super robot show.
But we've been watching, like, Zabungle, or as part of the Tono Power Hour, and watching Zabungle makes us go, how come there's not a lot of mech comedies out there? Like, there's mech shows with comedy in them, music with rocks in, but there's no outright comedy mech shows, really.
And it's like Obari was listening in on our calls the whole time. It's like, don't worry, fam, I got you.
Yeah. So in this block of episodes, the first one was kind of the prepping for the assault on Japan, right?
Yep. Lewis and Asami have to hash out their problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the only way they can do this is by rubbing against each other shirtless.
Yep. Yes.
For thousands to watch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, grinding on top of each other while the one girl gets a nosebleed.
Yep.
No, they do the classic. Neither of these guys are good at communicating, so they must communicate with their fists, right?
Yes.
And they have the
and by their fists they mean talking while punching, and then
yes, by that would be talking while punching
even
each other.
Isami's like, you just told me all this.
We could have just talked about this.
Like, there is literally no reason for this fight to happen. Oh man, there's so many good, like, just one-off gags in this episode. We find that Bravern is a big fucking gunpla nerd and owns a 3D printer.
A 3D printer so powerful that he can't tell us anymore about it at this point in history or something. Yeah,
he literally says this 3D printer will be useful later.
With no further comment.
And does he just hold up a book that says Screenwriting 101 on it after that?
Like, he's just, like, building life-size models of the Titano Striders in the show. Like, he has his own, like, fucking, like, little setup in a corner of the hangar. Like, it's like a teenager's room. It has, like, the Bravern logo stenciled on the wall. And yet,
when it comes time to spy on Smith and Asabi, his like special like listening device is just a boom mic.
He just 3D prints a giant robot-sized boom mic.
Like, that's the best he can come up with, and he's like following him around with a boom mic.
Oh man!
But trying to hide like behind the corner with it.
Also, the boom mic, famously something you can 3D print.
Well, it's a very powerful 3D printer. To be fair, but
it'll be useful later.
Yeah.
God, and like, he uses that boom mic so that he can relay the audio transcript of Asami and Lewis's like conversation to the entire fleet. So you get this great like sequence of like people just fucking doing their jobs on an aircraft carrier, and then
while they're listening,
hearing these sweaty men talk about their relationship.
While they're working out their lovers' quarrel here in the boxing ring. Yeah,
so good.
It's very good. I really like the energy as far as like, at least so far, this whole thing has been like a started as a joint operation between Japan and America, and so far there hasn't been any like racism or like I don't know, maybe the Americans are secretly evil or something like that. Like,
this is firmly like meathead America, or
right? So like
asshole America.
Because I feel like when a show like this goes down those kinds of paths, It's just like, I don't know, either you don't have the chops to handle this or I just don't care. I just want to get back to the sweaty men punching each other, right? Like, so I've appreciated the very positive energy on that front, so that we can just enjoy the jokes.
Bravern is definitely a show that constantly demonstrates how well it understands the lane it is in.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's a bunch of anime Americans, and in this anime American equals buff, shirtless dudes in sunglasses who like fist pump a lot and go hell yeah and holy shit.
Top Guns America.
Are they blonde by any chance?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what an anime American is.
It's very fun. It's a lot of fun.
It's aspirational.
It's aspirational perhaps, but
if only every American could hold themselves to this
same
standard.
The vision of what America could be.
Yeah. So that was very good. And then episode 6 is when we do get the actual assault on occupied Japan as it's been taken over by the aliens or whatever.
I do want to highlight that we get a brief clip of Lewis Smith's favorite tokusatsu show, or whatever, which
what is the name of the show?
Oh geez.
Oh man.
Hold on, I'll
is it the one Lulu starts marathoning?
Right, because they do explain this is how
Mechanical
Lulu
Assault Police Spar Kaiser.
Yeah, that's a pretty good name.
And so I don't know. You'll understand like how it's funny. It's funny to me that this is not a Sentai or a writer joke. It's more of a Metal Hero joke.
Right. This is like more like a big bad Beetleborg or something.
Right. Beetleborg is part of the Metal Hero series.
Yeah.
But just sure. Look.
I mean, it's like, and that's the thing, right? It's like in many ways, this show also constantly leverages the fact that Obari is directing it, right? And like, this show, these jokes are being told by the guy who like literally invented some of these premises, right? But like made them iconic.
Codified, yeah.
Yes.
Also, I suspect it is exploiting the fact that the target audience is slightly older than perhaps your standard animation.
Right.
But
yeah.
But so episode 6 is kind of the more serious, okay, we're going to Japan, and the premise is Asami and Lewis are going to be the Pathfinder scouts to check for signs of life in Japan. And if they don't find anybody in like 30 minutes, we're just going to orbitally bombard Tokyo, because clearly there have been no survivors.
Just saturation attack, yeah.
And so there's the tension is Asami is desperate to find any survivors, right? And this whole time, Bravern's like, don't worry, bro. It's going to be fine. I got this. We got this, right? And it's almost doing the classic joke again of, Bravern is just like suicidally, delusionally like confident that like, hey, we're heroes. And at the end of the day, the heroes always get it done. And the tension's ratcheting up. There's like a minute left. We can't find anybody. Asami finally just desperately jumps into the air and shouts at the top of his lungs, hey, is there anybody left still alive? We're the good guys, fight with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And finally, what's left of the resistance show up, to show that there are still people alive in Japan, but it's too late. The bombs have been dropped. And then fucking Bravern, who at this point I think might actually be a psychopath, is like, don't worry, Asami, there's a reason why I said it would all be okay. And it turns out that Bravern has the magical ability to just hack all technology and weapons, and just hacks all the missiles and diverts them away.
Shoots out a green wave that lets him telekinetically control all of the bombs, and of course throw them where they need to be.
Yes,
redirect them to the bad guys. Yeah,
in classic super robot fashion, the implication is Bravern could always do this.
Of course.
He just merely chose
I could have done this at any time.
There is nothing more super robot than pulling unused abilities out of your ass.
And simply decided to not
use
tell
Bullet
us.
X. Yeah.
He simply chose not to tell Asami, who's on the verge of a mental breakdown, because he thinks there are no more Japanese people left on the planet.
And yeah.
Yep.
And Bravern just waits because, like, the sun's not rising yet.
Oh, yeah. He needed to make sure that it was when the sun was rising. Yes.
And then, God, so Superbia shows up again, the blue robot that they fought earlier.
That had Lulu in it.
And, talking in gibberish, and then suddenly starts talking in legible Japanese.
It's like Bravern punches him or infuses him with English or with language.
Bravern explains that now all the boys and girls of the world can understand. They do a great joke of
Thank you, Bravern.
One of the characters like, what are you talking about? He's clearly got a Texan accent. Another one's like, no, I think he's speaking German.
Hiroshima dialect. Yeah.
Right. They all hear their own language, right? Yeah.
We find out that Superbia really wants Lulu back. I guess the implication, of course, being that all the death drives are more powerful when paired up with their pilot, as well.
Right. Kind of the parallel to Ohsama being in Bravern, right? He'll be more powerful as Lulu. Yeah.
Shout outs to the joke where Superbia is like, I'm sorry, who are you again? To Bravern. And Bravern's like, what do you mean? I'm Bang Bravern. And then the title screen appears behind him. And then it zooms out and it's
a diegetic projection of the title.
It's like a holographic projection of the logo behind him as he's posing.
Here's the really good thing. It's not the title screen from the OP. It's an entirely
slightly different,
unique title screen for just that scene.
Yeah. It's very good.
God.
Yeah, I just think the show is hilarious. The comedy writing and timing and everything is just perfect.
I really like the gag where they're having a meeting with the resistance who's still in Japan, and they're and the newcomers are like, so that thing, Bravern, and of course Bravern appears immediately, and so they're like, hey, so what's your deal? And and the dude who's been here the whole time, Lois says, God damn it.
Black Admiral's like, God damn it, not again.
And of course, Bravern's like, yes, allow me to tell you in great detail.
Go into my
chapter 2.
Yes. Yeah.
And I need this joke to happen at least 2 more times in this show where they meet a new crew of humans who are like, who the fuck is that? What did you call him? And you just get more people saying, no, don't! And then Bravern's like, all right, let's start from the top.
Mm-hmm. You keep cutting off Bravern earlier and earlier into his spiel.
That sounds like something you should really do in the final battle.
New crew comes in.
Speaking of that, I will say, I've been having a great time with Bravern. Really... Mm-hmm. Again, it's neck and neck with Dungeon Meshi for the show. I'm just having a blast with every week. It really does make Thursdays a very pleasant day to watch anime this season.
Yep.
Didn't they say they had to fight how many of these death drives?
I'm not sure.
7? 9?
I think.
I don't remember.
Several more than presumably there are episodes remaining, is right?
Yeah, bro, we fought 2 so far. Even the one that showed up in the stinger of episode 5, voiced by Tetsu Inada, going in a very baritone Gaga P. Didn't show up this episode. How?
And we're on episode 6.
Yeah, dude. We don't have that many episodes left. This is a 1-course show.
I mean, look, you can kill 5 of those dudes at once.
We can do a gag, right?
That's probably what they'll do, but I'm just really curious.
Maybe they'll combine.
Oh.
I mean, true, yeah.
That is how the Gurren Lagann movie sped through all those guys.
Yeah.
The other thing that we need time to spend on, and we've mentioned this before, but now that we've had a couple more episodes to gather evidence, Bravern is Smith in some capacity, right? Is that pretty much
that's what they're building up to, right? And I feel because Superbia doesn't recognize Bravern. The other running theory was that Bravern is a member of the Death Drives who defected, but if the other Death Drives don't recognize him, that he really is just a wild card. Nobody knows who he is. So,
I mean, there are ways you can get around that, magic. memory
Yeah.
loss plot stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. And when I say in some capacity, he could be like an AI based on his memories or something. I don't know. Who knows? But I think there was a bit with like Lulu kind of acknowledging Bravern similarly to how she talked. She like basically feeling like he's also Smith or something.
Right.
There are a
She
couple
also
other
calls Bravern Smith.
yeah, there are a couple of other like moments where it felt like they were glaringly trying to hint that there was some kind of connection there. We talked about in the past about how Bravern, when Smith offers to pilot him, Bravern says it can't be him, that kind of stuff. So
Right.
I do feel like there's enough clues there for that to be a valid conspiracy theory.
Oh, definitely. I just also think at the end of the day, Bravern is primarily a comedy, so
Yes.
how much weight this actual reveal will have, I think, is up in the air. Like, Bravern is the type of show that could easily just do it as an intentional anti-climax in the penultimate episode, where Bravern's just like, oh, by the way, I'm Lewis Smith sent from an alternate future.
Right.
And that's right?
Yeah.
So
on the other hand, you could also play it for laughs in the opposite way and make it like as operatically drawn out as possible.
Oh, dude,
that
could you-
also
okay,
works
well,
as a joke.
It would
Alright.
start playing the ED.
yes, Galaxy Brain. If we do get that where Bravern finally explains his backstory,
Mm-hmm.
what if he comes from a universe that plays all these tropes completely straight? Like, comically serious.
I mean, that's
right?
kind of the entire show's joke, right? Is that
Well,
he's
no,
completely
I mean,
out of
like-
place.
Well, okay, what I mean is that tonally, Bravern as a show is still a comedy. I mean, he comes from the, like, serious alien dimension,
Right. 'Cause, like, the
alien
people-
invasion
the-
dimension.
Everybody else in the show in universe is like rolling their eyes at his like antics, right?
He's
But
corny
right.
as hell.
right, him coming from a place where that is like legitimately serious would be pretty funny. Yeah.
Like, what if we go to, like, his timeline where Bravern did not become a super robot show, and it's still that real robot show it was in the first 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot there's a lot of ways they could go with it, and because of the format of the show, like you could spend 10 episodes on this, you could spend 30 seconds, they'll figure out some way to cram it in there, right? So
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just a lot of fun. And I've been impressed with the comedy part myself. But the robot stuff is fun too. Like I don't want to discount that either. But just for me personally, the main reason I'm watching it is because they're doing the comedy so well.
Yes. It's a great time.
All right. Well, that is going to do it then for this episode. So we can get to our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog or on co-host at GLORIO. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Remember, kick all dogs in the head.